I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we will start by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Start the meeting's agenda with the approval of the agenda, which includes the suggested motions and resolutions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Anna. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we will shift to Dr. Lewis with her report, her superintendent report and staff reports.
This is going to echo here. It is my pleasure to introduce our audit team, and Janelle, thank you so much for your work, Janelle, that you've done. I know it's been a lot and we were really close here to the deadline, but much appreciation for all the work that you have done, and I'm excited to turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to present with the board here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint with the audit reports summarized in there, as well as some of the charts and graphs that are within the communication letter. So the first thing that I wanted to cover with you tonight are the audit reports that we issue as part of the audit process. The first one being the independent auditor's report. This report again does talk about the financial statements being management's responsibility, and then our responsibility is to express an opinion based on the results of our test work. So you're relying on your internal team as well as the team that you have at CISO to help pull all that information together. And we did issue an unmodified opinion on your statements. This is what's considered a clean opinion or the best opinion that we can offer you. It states that your financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The second report we issue is our report in accordance with government auditing standards. These standards require us to look at internal controls over financial reporting, as well as compliance with various laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. When it comes to the internal controls, we had one item to report, and that's the lack of segregation of accounting duties. Due to limited staff that you have within the finance area, there are some duties that are overlapping in the transaction cycles that are happening. And a very common finding for districts of your size to have that kind of the cost benefit of adding additional people to be part of the processes. So as a board, we just recommend that you remain aware of the situation and be diligent in the reviews that you are doing, monthly reports that you get, budget to actual reports, the list of checks that you get for approvals and so on. Be diligent in those reviews. And then when it comes to compliance, we had no instances of non-compliance to report to you. The next report is our report on uniform guidance, and this relates to the federal dollars that the district receives. We did test the Education Stabilization Program as well as special education, and we did issue an unmodified opinion on the compliance with the requirements of these major programs. So again, another clean report for the district. And then the last report that we issue is our report on Minnesota legal compliance. The state auditor's office gives us a list of state statutes to test compliance with each year, and we had no instances of non-compliance. So again, another clean report for the district. And then moving on, we've got some charts and graphs that show some of the trend analysis. The first table here is the general education formula allowance, kind of the history of where that amount has been for the last 10 years, as well as the current fiscal 2025. For fiscal 24, you did have a 4% increase which is the largest increase in the years presented here. But in a lot of cases, it wasn't sufficient enough to cover some of the inflationary increases that you were seeing on the expenditure side. The next table here includes your resident ADM numbers. We like to include student numbers within our presentation because such a large component of your general fund revenues are based on student numbers. We like to include those in here. So the first one here is your resident ADM numbers. For fiscal 24, you did see an increase of about 51.59 ADM, or about 2.1%. And then you've seen some fluctuations in these numbers over the last 5 years that are presented here. 2024 was the highest in the years presented, and you can also see that on the graph here on the next slide. And then those ADM numbers are converted to pupil unit numbers with the different weighting factors that we have here. So those secondary students are weighted a little bit heavier, so you're receiving more aids for those students. So using those weighting factors, the ADMs are converted to the pupil unit numbers that you see at the bottom of the slide. You did have an overall increase in resident pupil units, coincides with the increase in the ADM numbers itself. But you also saw an increase in the residents leaving the district and a decrease in the non-residents coming in. So an overall decrease in the adjusted pupil units or pupil units served. And that's the number that you're getting some of those state aids paid on. So when you look at and compare the residents going elsewhere compared to the non-residents coming in, you have had a net gain on an open enrollment in each of the 5 years presented here. And then this next graph also summarizes the pupil unit numbers. That number has been declining in each of the years presented here. And then the next graph here charts out the increases and decreases that you've seen. So you can see there's a couple years where you've had increases in the resident ADM, which is the green bar, but an overall decrease in the pupil units served, which is the blue bar. And then following that, we get into the financial numbers themselves. The table here shows budget to actual results for the general fund. So the first two columns of numbers are what you as a board approved, kind of directive to management of where you anticipated the fund balance should end up for the general fund. The final budget called for a decrease in fund balance of about $1.2 million, and the actual was a decrease about $2.3 million. Couple things going into that. In total, your revenues were about $138,000 under budget. The largest cause for that variance was the federal sources of revenue. You had budgeted to use more of your allotments of those federal entitlements, and on some of those you didn't spend the entire amount. You chose to carry some of those over to the following fiscal years. And then the other local revenue category was over budget. Historically, the district has budgeted conservatively for this area. Those are the revenues that are a little bit more unpredictable. You did have higher investment income this year with a turn in the market rates. Also, student activity dollars are in there, and third-party medical billing. So again, those are sometimes hard to predict, those numbers. So the district has historically budgeted conservatively for those. And then on the expenditure side, you're about $1.3 million over budget on there. There were some things in there, technology purchases that weren't budgeted for. You can see down under the other financing sources, there's amount there as well that's not budgeted. That offsets some of those expenditures that weren't budgeted for. But then you also saw overages in things like transportation costs being higher than anticipated. You also had some project work completed ahead of schedule, so that was actually about $911,000. So between the technology purchases that are offset with those other financing sources and then the project work that was done ahead of schedule, that kind of accounts for a lot of the budget overages that you had for the year. Moving on, we've got a summary of general fund sources of revenue. For 2024, your revenues increased about $1.1 million, or about 2.1%. The increase in the state sources was the largest component of that. Some of that, again, was attributed to the increase in the formula allowance. You also had increases in the special education aids, as well as some other new aids that came about in 2024. You did see a decrease in that other line item. That consists of other local dollars as well as federal dollars, and the federal component was the largest portion of that decrease in there. And specifically those COVID grants. You used up a large portion of your COVID grants in 2023. And once those dollars were used up, you didn't have those allocations to spend again. So when you look at the numbers here, your state sources of revenue make up about 76% of your total general fund revenue. So that's where the student numbers can impact that number quite significantly. And then moving on to expenditures, we've got the two pie charts here that show an allocation by program as to where you're spending your dollars from year to year. When you look at the 2 years in comparison, they're fairly consistent as to where those dollars are being spent. And specifically in the classroom instruction areas, the regular instruction, vocational, and special education, that accounted for about 59% of your total general fund expenditures for 2024, compared to 58% in the prior year. So again, very consistent there. And then the next table here summarizes the overall general fund operations for the last 5 years. As I mentioned, revenues increased about 2.1%. Expenditures were up about 3.4%. Special education, and specifically staffing in that area, was about a $1.6 million increase. You also saw increases again in transportation costs. You did have expenditures in excess of revenues of about $1.8 million. And then factoring in those finance purchase proceeds of $333,000 and transfers to other funds of about $901,000. So overall, your total fund balance for the general fund decreased about $2.3 million. When you look at the bottom portion of that table, it breaks out the different components of your fund balance. So much of that decrease hit in the LTFM restriction by spending some of those dollars, as well as the unassigned fund balance. The next graph here, the green line is your total fund balance. You can see how that number has changed. From 2021, you've been spending down that fund balance. At the end of 2024, your unrestricted fund balance is about 6% of your expenditures, your annual expenditures. The district policy is to have about 7 to 10% of your annual expenditures in that unassigned or unrestricted category, so slightly below that district policy. So that's something you might want to work towards getting back to that number. There are some dollars, COVID dollars, in the 2024 expenditure numbers, so it might correct itself going forward, because you won't have those additional expenditures in your numbers for the going forward. And then the next table here is the food service fund. Overall, you had an increase in both revenues and expenditures. The state provided free meals to all students for 2024 if they weren't receiving free meals on the federal program. So you did see an overall increase in the number of meals served. You did have revenues in excess of expenditures of about $149,000. So an overall increase in your fund balance here as well. And then the last table we have for you is the community service fund. This fund also saw an increase in revenues with increased participation in the programs. Expenditures increased with a new lease that was signed for the year. That was the large component of that. And then you also had some other financing sources. Transfers from the general fund were in there for operating referendum dollars, the lease levy dollars for ABE, and so forth. So overall, expenditures did exceed revenues. And then fund balance decreased about $74,000 for this fund. We also show the components of fund balance for this fund and the restrictions within this fund. That community education restriction has been in a deficit fund balance. It continues to be in a deficit fund balance. So that's maybe a program that you want to monitor and review the operations of that program to see if that's something that can turn around there. But overall, that's the summary that we have for you for 2024. Certainly open to any questions if any of you have any.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody? All right.
Thank you so much.
Janelle, we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your teams for the work they put into preparing for the audit, and again for the opportunity to work with the district.
Thank you, Janelle. I think, do you have a superintendent report? Yep.
Yep. Thank you so much, Chair. All right, it is my absolute delight to call up our principals. They're going to share with you how things are going with the procedures of our cell phones. And just as a reminder, and you know how I am about the language, as do our principals. So as part of new legislation, our school board will need to adopt in March, we still are not sure the exact date, a cell phone policy. And so right now we don't have a cell phone policy, but our principals are going to share the procedures in their buildings, what's working, what's been needing enhancements, etc. And then we will move to doing our work. MSBA is who we use for our model policies, to look at those, to use as frame. Sometimes we make adjustments to them, sometimes we don't. That new policy is being rolled out during the MSBA conference in January. So then we'll be able to get to work. But I wanted you to really hear the true reality of what's going on. And while it's our principals presenting, they're going to share staff voice on this as well. Principals, this is the first time we've launched this new setup. So I think that microphone cord, Gailey, will be just a little tight for you, but it should still work. Oh, look at that. Yay.
All right.
Okay, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting our principal team here to kind of share with you our current practices and things that we're experiencing at our schools. When we centered ourselves in this presentation, we were really thinking about three kind of major components, and those were around relationships, focus and attentiveness to school, and then safety. And so you'll kind of hear some themes through our principal team around that. From a relational standpoint, obviously limiting some of our technology devices that are very prevalent in our world right now really gives that increased face-to-face social interaction. And that's something obviously we see a lot of benefit from. Also, the distractibility pieces when it comes to relationships. Obviously, it gives us that good FaceTime and centered conversations. From a focus standpoint, we really were kind of thinking about it from the lens of engagement. Obviously, achievement is a great big focus for all of us as principals and this leadership team, and we know that through those intentional interactions with one another and discussions and dialogue, we have that increase in engagement in our academics. Also related to that, temptations are real for all humans. And so especially with our youngest learners and our high school students as well, having that limited access allows for less distractibility and temptation. And then from a safety standpoint, obviously, there's a lot of things that our students face each day when it comes to social media and when it comes to interactions that happen over the phone or other technology devices. And so in thinking about that, we really want to focus on fostering a safe environment from a social standpoint, from a social media standpoint, and limiting those opportunities for cyberbullying and harassment, which are very real and have very big impacts to our students. And then obviously protecting our kids, sometimes from the unknown that we know can be big, hard things for them. So you'll hear that theme throughout the presentation today around why relationships, focus, and safety are kind of that center point and why we're here today.
Good evening. All right, I'm Veronica Matheson, principal at Stevenson, and at the elementary level, this is not something that really interrupts our day very much at all. So we ask our scholars to keep their phones and their personal tech away during the day, and we communicate that during orientation and really have had no pushback. We do allow it at dismissal because we all know as parents that we have to allow our kids to communicate to their parents and with pickup or any activities. Like I said, minimal issues. I think I've had one thing this year so far with cell phones. Usually in the spring, 4th grade, that's when we see an increase. We problem solve as needed with individual students and with families. Some of the bigger things that come up is if a student is recording or taking photos of another child or of an adult, and a lot of times it happens on the bus, which is super fun because we have little control over what happens on the bus, and we try to teach that. The other piece is harmful messages outside of school between students. That was the one thing that has come up at Stevenson so far this year, and our parents are usually really grateful that they are not continuing to do that messaging at school. So, but we do have to help support when it leads into a conflict or something that's unresolved at school, and then we step in to help do some conflict resolution. And then social media posts, that's something that has come up in the past. So.
Before we go on, can I ask a question about the elementaries? Just out of curiosity, how many of our elementary students have a phone with them in school?
It's a great question, Ross. You know, we would have to survey to find out because we ask from the beginning just to keep them at home or keep them away. But you'd be surprised. There's actually quite a few of them, especially with even our kindergartners that might have them. They do a really great job, though, at keeping them in their backpacks, so we really don't see them much.
Hello, good evening. I'm Amy Cochran, principal at the middle school. So this school year, we implemented something new. So we at the middle school have had some procedures in place in previous years. And this summer, the Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals really did a big push with secondary principals around cell phone procedures. And this Away for the Day was really pushed kind of through the Principals Association. And so it was something that we met with our leadership team about and decided to adopt this year. So our procedures right now are, we call it Away for the Day, which is a nice little slogan for middle schoolers. Essentially means to have your cell phones and technology devices away in your lockers and out of sight for the school day. And really the idea behind that is that it minimizes the temptation, again, as middle schoolers, if it's on me, if it's on my body, if it's with me, if it's sitting on my desk, I have the temptation to constantly be looking at it. And so devices are allowed before school, so before 8 a.m. students have them in the hallways, then they go in their lockers, and then they can have them again at 3. We do have some exceptions to that, students that have medical situations or maybe other emergency reasons. We've also had some meetings with parents who we've made exceptions, and I will say with our organization focus this year, with our Avid School-wide, that's worked really well because all of our students have binders that have pencil pouches in them, so any of the students we've made kind of specific plans for, typically that's where they're housed, so they're still out of sight, away. Those students have really specific plans with us, and we really know that they're out of sight. I think one other thing that's been really helpful is that we've had really clear expectations around what happens if I have my phone out? What if I have it in the hall? If I have it in a classroom, what happens? And so we were really clear about that from the beginning with both families and with students, and asking families to review that with their students so that students just knew up front what was going to happen if they did have it out. And so it's kind of a progressive from first time it's, a warning, second time it's dean will take it, it will be in the office, students can have it back at the end of the day. The next time, parent or guardian would be asked to pick up the phone. And then if we get to like a fourth or fifth time, typically a plan is created with the family. I will just tell you this year, the number of parents that have said, you keep it until I decide I'm going to come get it. we are housing quite a few cell phones right now. So, but so far I will just say, and I am going to share in a couple slides here, just some feedback specifically from the middle school around how it's going. But I will say having really clear expectations and then just being really clear up front has really helped. I think students have really understood right away what the expectations are, and we really haven't had a lot of issues with it because students kind of just know what the expectations are.
All right, good evening, Kelly McConville, principal at the high school. So a lot of the things have already been said that I can echo from the secondary perspective. So at the high school, we just say no electronic devices bell to bell. So before school, passing time, during our one lunch, cell phones, electronic devices are in use. Most of our students are very proficient with their electronic devices. One of the things that we are working on is that consistency. And so consistency in what does it mean to have a cell phone out? What does it mean to have an electronic device? So it's something that first semester it's been a little bit rocky at times between different teachers. And so one of the things that we're doing is we have a staff meeting coming up at the beginning of January to actually role play and to define with our leadership team, what does it mean? What is our expectations around that? And I think we've seen much more engagement, but it's something that is a work in progress definitely at the high school as far as having that clear expectation. All staff are following it, and really just having those conversations with families and students about our expectations when it's not being met.
All right, so just a little bit of feedback from teachers and families. So most of this came from the middle school, and again, I know Veronica had mentioned that they don't have a ton of concerns there, but certainly have had parents, especially like in fourth grade, I think is probably where it's cell phones are seen the most. But just in a particular situation, a parent was very thankful that a situation that happened on social media, that happened outside of school, was very thankful that that didn't bleed inside to school because there was no phones allowed. And so just really parents being very thankful for the procedures that we have in place. We, because the Away for the Day is new for us at the middle school, we've been doing a lot of talking about it and at our leadership meetings and asking our leadership team to really talk with their teams of teachers and what are you seeing, what are you hearing, how's it going, are there things we need to try and do differently. So this was just some specific feedback, and I will tell you the number of times I have heard teachers say the first bullet point of just that the student-to-student communication has quadrupled this year. Like teachers are saying kids are talking to each other when students finish their work at the end of the class period. Instead of having their phones, their face in their phones, they are communicating, they're working together, they're collaborating. So just that like social time with their peers has really, really increased this year with, again, not having it on their body, because even if they weren't supposed to use it during academic time, if it's in my pocket, if it's with me, that's going to be the first go-to as soon as I have downtime. And because they don't have that temptation, it's in their lockers, they don't have that to be able to pull it out. Teachers have also just reported in between classes, again, students, some go to their lockers and some don't because they carry their binders with them. So there's not always a reason to go to their locker. And so then they're spending their time in the hallway in their 4-minute passing time, really hanging out with their friends and really socializing, again, for that peer-to-peer interaction. Just an 8th grade teacher shared that beyond a phone that fell out of their pocket, hadn't had one issue in the 9 weeks in their classroom, and that was in an 8th grade classroom. So that's huge. I think we just have attributed that on our leadership team of just like the really clear communication and expectations around it. And as soon as we see like, oh, we're having a little bit of increase this week. This week we have 10 phones in the office. Like for example, yesterday, Mr. Engelhardt did an announcement at the end of the day, just a reminder as we go into the last week before break, here's our cell phone expectations, just want to give you a reminder. So we're just constantly reminding students and teaching them of the expectations. And as a result, we're seeing just really fantastic results. Our 6th grade team has really reported like the number of students that will say, oh shoot, I forgot I have it in my pocket, can I run to my locker? So students are like advocating for themselves to go put it away, and really taking that accountability and that responsibility. We've had 7th and 8th grade students talk to teachers about this a lot, and like, yes, we don't love it because we love our cell phones, and in the same sense, we understand and we get it, and now we're seeing how it's changing things. And so that's been really powerful to hear students just know that students are taking extra work, they're, the activities, socializing, which is really a huge increase compared to last year. And just what our policy was last year, our procedure was last year, 5th and 6th grade didn't have it, but 7th and 8th grade did have it in the hallways, so passing time, and at lunchtime. So often at lunch, students would spend their whole lunch period on their phones. We also saw a lot of recording of things, taking pictures of things, that kind of cyberbullying things happening. And this year that has been, completely almost cut down to not happening. So just really, really fantastic feedback from teachers and families. And I will tell you, a lot of feedback from families around how much they really appreciate it, and takes the battle out of families to say thank you for this. So it's going at the middle school really well. Oops, I keep going the wrong way.
One of the things that we set this up across all the schools, the school year, is really that clear communication to families. So we had cell phone and personal device user agreements that we had at our open houses that families signed, and it really laid out really clearly the expectations, the why behind it, kind of like what would happen if it was if they were used, and I think that really helped get buy-in from families. We got a lot of compliments at the high school at our open house about thank you for doing this. I think I'll just speak personally as a parent myself. Cell phones are really challenging. Cell phones weren't around when I was a kid, so it's hard to parent because we didn't have that experience. So parents have been thankful that we are taking this active approach. So the agreements, they're all linked in here. They're very similar. One of the things that has been really nice in this work is the consistency, and at least with secondary for sure, and I know with elementary, working together to make sure that we are, we have a lot of families that have siblings in different schools, that our expectations are very similar, but fit the developmental, age of which the student is. So. And kind of the last slide really just talks about some of the resources that we've used as we made these procedures, as we looked at this, at the research behind it, as we communicate to our teachers, our families, our students about the why and the importance of engagement in school. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, Chair Connell, I have one question. As we contemplate, procedures or a policy in the spring, I'm wondering what the high school staff and administration and teachers think about the middle school away for the day, because it's slightly different, right? The high school can have it out in passing.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. One of the things that I always like to do is to see what other schools are doing, other communities, other districts, and that is very similar. We're seeing that just a slight difference between the middle school and the high school. I think a lot of times with our high school students, there's jobs, there's other things that they do need to communicate during the day. Hey, shift is open, or I'm not going to cake, can you cover me? Those kind of things. And so when we get student voice, we get that feedback. We do see that need is greater at the high school for those downtimes. And one of the things is just to be very clear, it's that instructional time. That is that sacred time that we want to make sure that no electronic devices are being used.
We're going to have to write the policy at some point. Is there anything that you would love to see in a policy that would support you, and your staff, and your teachers, and your paras? Anything that you can think of? I know it's kind of on the spot. We're not writing anything down, but.
This would be my last comment. One of the things that just having some conversations is just one of the things that we were trying to do at the high school is to get more student voice in the things that we're doing. So I think we're off to a good start. But one of the things that whatever we do moving forward is just to make sure that we have that student voice, and it's nice to see we have students on the school board to have those conversations and get that voice as you move towards policy.
Don't drop it.
The only other thing that I would mention is a lot of times with our younger friends, we'll have like personal technology devices. So as we kind of think about like cell phone policy, I know that's often what is heard, just thinking about personal technology devices as well, like from a watch standpoint, as well as, you know, all the cool things that are coming up here, tablets, those kind of things. So just kind of keeping that in mind when we think about language.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with the elementary. Like I know Emmett, when he was in 5th grade, he had just had a watch, right? You wouldn't really know what it is, but that thing could be buzzing and distracting and
Games.
I'm guessing maybe Amy's got a smartwatch.
Yeah, well, we haven't had a ton of issues with watches. I
Yeah.
would say for us, we do say technology devices because headphones are a bigger deal.
Okay.
Headphones, yeah.
And however, because the cell phones haven't been out, it's also cut the headphones down because I don't have anything to connect it to. So they typically, you know, prior to this, they would have their headphones in and you might not know it. Like I have put on, I might have some other head covering, and my headphones are hiding. You know, I'm playing my music, so I'm really not paying attention. And now that's really just like also not existent. I would say that's been really great. So just like that piece for us, the technology can, you know, make
Technology as a whole versus just
cell
phones. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, certainly about cell phones, but there's everything else.
Other things that connect to it. That's helpful. Awesome. Anything else, board? Nope. All right. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Good work.
you so much. And you all can choose to stay or go. Up to you. Thanks again. Nice work. All right, next up, and I'm just going to pause so you can see the animation. So I'm very honored to recognize Sarah Jones and Russ Meisner. It was perfect timing yesterday. Their certificates arrived. So recognizing them on phases 1 through 4 of the MSBA training. And I did tell them that they can share anything that they would like about the training, but it's not a forced share. So I'll let you two if you have something.
I know a lot of us have done lots of different parts of it. I think that it was really helpful coming into the school board role. Just so many things to learn. Thank you. So yeah, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to go through all of them and just different glimpses. It also was really helpful to meet lots of board representatives from different districts. I think that that was really valuable to build that network as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key points right there, sharing the experience with other board members and hearing the stories and challenges that they have and the solutions that they've come up with. And having gone through them and having been on a different school board in the past, going back to these classes, just being reminded, because there's a lot of stuff that the school board has to do. And just so, you know, even taking them again, and it's kind of a continuing education thing, was very helpful to me.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, and thanks for taking the time to go through those courses and workshops.
Thank you. Next up, I'm excited to update you on the Strive field trip. So Lori and I are Strive mentors, and Strive is a program through the Rotary. And 2 weeks ago, we were able to visit Anoka Hennepin Tech College. I had not been there. Lori hadn't as well. And we were able to hear about their programs offered, such as nursing lab, electrician lab, and automotive lab. And their mannequins in the nursing lab are racially responsive. They're all different ages. They're birthing babies and they're breathing. So it's really exciting to see all of that innovation of what's similar to a lab experience. So it was just so exciting to see. And we had a student in our group that was highly interested in the nursing program. This is also with Columbia Heights students. So we started here and then took the bus over to Columbia Heights to pick up students there, and then went to the college visits. Then we went to Anoka Ramsey Community College. The Rotary buys lunch for all of the students and the mentors. So that was nice for them to get that campus experience. We did see some current Fridley students there that aren't part of Strive, as well as some Fridley alums. So that was fun for our students to be able to connect. Anoka Ramsey Community College, it felt very different. Lori had been there before. It was just a very different feel from the first one. So it was nice for our students to be able to see that. And we got to see different programs that they have there as well. So just a great opportunity. Also, Strive students are eligible for a scholarship through the Rotary. And one of Anoka Tech matches it? Or Anoka Ramsey. I knew I would get that mixed up. Anoka Ramsey matches it, and Anoka Tech is looking into that. So it was just a really nice field trip. There's more field trips coming up, and also we have, I think, a Strive mentorship on Thursday session as well. Strive, we also do things like help with getting the FAFSA filled out and those pieces. So it's nice to be a part of that. Oh, yes. So excited about this slide as well. So it's unfortunate that Stephen isn't here because this is really out of his team. Stephen is also a Lion, as is Eric Keeler. Board, did I miss anybody else? I don't think any. Okay. So we were able to help. So Community Ed as well as Fridley Lions, we jointly put on this holiday lunch. It is a big deal. This is my second year going. Much more active in it this year than I was last year. Lori was there. Stephen was there both years as well. It was just so exciting. We had to cut off registrations at 280 seniors. And our seniors that come, they get a full think of it kind of like a Thanksgiving meal, and they only pay $5. And then the Lions supplements the rest. And this, people, as I was checking them in, they're very much like have been looking forward to it for 6 months, and it's just so exciting. And then their outfits, I mean, you saw we stepped it up this year, but ours did not match to the level of theirs. And the picture that you see, I don't actually have a hat on. That is an interesting accidental posing of their centerpiece thing. So it looks funny. Everyone's like, I love your hat. And I'm like, oop, I'm not wearing it. But it was just really nice to be there and to see our seniors. And I can't even tell you the number of times when I was checking people in, they said, congrats at the referendum. So happy about that. So it just was a really special event. We ran out of seating. We think more than 280 came that registered, but we let them through the door, obviously. So it was just a really, really, really wonderful event. And our Black and Gold Gala coming up here in January. We're so excited to have that again. And just asking people to please order their tickets or their tables to donate. And we are so honored that we will be recognizing our Golden Apple recipient as Renee Van Gorp, who I know we can all agree absolutely deserves this award. And we're just so excited to honor her. I have broken protocol, and since I couldn't tell Lori to make the slide, I'm going to switch over. I'm excited to introduce Boo. Boo, we recognized you at the last board meeting, but we're so excited to have you join our team. This is end of day 2 as our senior officer of HR, and Anita, our HR specialist, started last Monday, and what a difference it makes to have you. And I just want to give a special shout out to Lori and Rochelle. They really have taken quite a bit on really since July and August with HR, and then when we ended our contract with CISO at the end of October, they exclusively did the HR work for the entire month of November and then half of December. So thank you so much for doing all of that, and we are very indebted to you for taking that piece on, and are just so excited to have our new team in place. So welcome officially, Boo. Thank you. And with that, I will entertain any questions that you have about the report.
Great. Any questions? No? All right. Moving right along, we'll jump into the business action items. First up, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the audit results that we heard earlier today. Do I have a motion?
I will move to approve the audit results.
Meisner with the motion. Do I have a second? Second by Anna. All those in favor of approving the audit results signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. Next up, we have, I would entertain a motion to accept the tax levy final certification of pay 25 levy. Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the levy.
Motion by Meisner again. Do I have a second? We're staying consistent. Second by Anna. Again, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have a resolution, or I would entertain a motion for a resolution of accepting gifts, and that the school board of Fridley Public Schools accepts with appreciation the following gifts received by the school district. We received a $334 donation for popcorn at the free family movie nights given to us by the Fridley Education Association. Do I have a motion to accept the gift and extend our gratitude?
So moved.
Motion by Stark. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jones. This is a roll call vote. We'll start with Miss Anna. Miss Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Carnop is aye. Mr. Meisner.
Aye.
Miss Stark.
Aye.
Miss Ahmed.
Aye.
Miss Shobi. Motion passes. Next up, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the contract with the Center for Effective School Operations and Notice of Termination. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Meisner. Do I have any conversations or questions on this before we move on?
Chair, I'd like to
Yep.
just
Yep. Okay.
chime in here
Yep.
if you don't mind. We have been with CISO. We started with CISO Finance in late November, early December last year, and then HR in January, and then transportation starting in February. And CISO really worked side by side with the district to gap fill and to really help to get processes, systems, procedures in place. We found that through staff input and just other pieces that for the HR contract, it was really more beneficial for us to have our in-house HR after we had that transition time with CISO. So that portion of the contract ended in October 31, which is why we're bringing it forward now to have the contract for transportation and for finance through June 30th. We're finding the same thing with finance and transportation have really benefited from that work and getting feedback and so forth that we want to bring that work back in-house at Fridley. And again, appreciative of the work that CISO has done with that. CISO does have a 120-day notice period. So if we don't provide notice by March 1st, then the contract auto-renews. So that's why we're bringing this forward to you, is to approve it now without the HR portion, and then authorize the superintendent to notify CISO, both finance and transportation, that we do not wish to extend the contract beyond June 30th. Thank you, Chair.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would say that we really appreciate the partnership with CISO and being able to fill the gaps that we have, step in when we've needed support, when we've needed to fill positions. And I would echo the same thing that Superintendent Lewis said, that I've heard also from staff and from our community that it is really valuable to have our own employees in-house, to have them local and housed, but that we have really appreciated the partnerships.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I would also second that motion when you were there, if you were there.
We're there. It's second. And I would just echo what Dr. Lewis and Ms. Jones had said as well. So with that, this is a roll call vote. Ms. Anna? Aye. Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Carnop is aye. Mr. Meisner?
Aye.
Ms. Stark?
Aye.
Ms. Ahmed?
Aye.
Ms. Shobi? Motion passes. Next up, we have the chair would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda, which covers the minutes from the last meeting, new contracts, amendments, leaves of absences, resignations, and terminations, and also the American Indian Education Application and Program Plan. No need for a roll call vote here. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, and to finish, we have some important dates coming up. We have the IB Diploma Celebration and Silver Platter Breakfast at the Fridley High School Media Center on December 18th at 7:30 a.m. On December 19th at 7 p.m. at the District Auditorium, we have the Fridley High School Holiday Spectacular. No school starts on December 23rd through January 1st for winter break. And then on January 3rd at 7 o'clock at the District Auditorium, we have a free family movie night where we will be featuring the Kung Fu Panda 4 movie. The middle school dance for 7th and 8th graders is on January 16th at 4 o'clock at the middle school. I'm a bit surprised my 7th grader didn't tell me about this. And then we also have on January 15th the Earning College Credit at the Fridley High School Info Night at the District Auditorium, 6 o'clock on January 15th. And then we have Bingo Night, which I understand earlier this week was a great success at the middle school. We're having Bingo Night at Stevenson Elementary on January 16th at 5 o'clock. No school on January 17th for planning and evaluation. No school for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on January 20th. And then our next board meeting will be January 21st here at the Community Center with the 5:30 work session, 7 o'clock public comment, and then 7:30 business session. And then I would just add also, we have the Fridley Foundation Gala on January 30th held at Jack's Cafe. I encourage anyone that hasn't bought tickets, please do so. And looking forward to a great night to raise a lot of great money for some good causes. With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Jones. Do I have a second? Second by Anna. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 8:22. Thank you very much.